So here we have the confounding context bug. We're using JSFiddle, and you're welcome to follow along at the above URL. We have the DevTools open at the bottom, and we have our code here in the middle. What we have is a student object with name and resume properties and a study method. We're saving off the study method to a memorize function, and then what we're going to do is call student study, saying that he's studying chemistry. Then we'll print out the resume of that student, and then they'll memorize history, which is essentially just studying it, and then we'll print out his resume again. But what we find if we look in the console is things partially work, but not so much. We get a console log message that John Smith is studying chemistry, but then we get an exception. So let's take a look. Here we're calling student study chemistry. We come into the study method, and obviously this console worked just fine. But then what happens, we have an inner function, and then we are invoking that function. So we're passing in the subject, we're getting into the inner function. So what's happening is there is no resume, and so we're trying to call push, but there is no push, and so it blows up. So why is there no resume? It's because the this in here is specific to this add resume. It's actually the window object, and it's not the this of the study. So that's a problem. So one way people get around that is they will create a new variable, and a lot of times they'll call it that, and they'll say this off to it. And in here, they will change this to that. And so now, essentially, we've made it so that variable is the this from the study and not the this for this particular function. It's a little weird, but let's run the code. It'll work a little bit better. So now we have John Smith is studying chemistry. We could print out, sure enough, our internal resume has chemistry, but now we have a problem with our memorize function. We have result is studying history. Well, that's kind of weird because where did result come from? So let's look in here, memorize history. We come in here, subject's history, and somehow this .name is result, which is really kind of weird. If we come down here to our DevTools, we could switch to the result pane, which is this window, and we can actually look that window.name is result. It's actually looking at the name property off the window object. So when we call a function that's not off of an object, by default, the this becomes the window, which is not what we want. So one way to handle this is to invoke the call method, which allows us to choose what we want the this implicit parameter to be when it's invoked. And what we're going to choose is we want it to be the student. So we want to invoke memorize, but inside of it, we want the this to be the student, and then we're going to pass history as our parameter. So now everything works just as expected. John Smith is studying chemistry, his resume is chemistry, now John Smith is studying history, and now his resume has chemistry and history. Another way we could have changed this is to use the apply method instead. It also lets you choose what the this implicit parameter will be as the first argument, but if we want to pass arguments to the function, we actually have to put them in an array as our second argument. We'll run this, and everything still works. Another way we could have solved this is use the bind method, which is an ECMAScript 5 method. What you do here is we call bind, and then we tell it what we want to bind it to. So we want to bind it to the student. So that's what the this implicit parameter will be. It will return a new function that will remember what the this implicit parameter should be, because we bound it to the student. So now if we come back here, we could revert this back to what we had before. And even though we're just calling memorize right here, instead of the this being the window, it will be the student, because that's what we bound it to. So if I run this, then everything again will work just fine. If we wanted to, we could actually get rid of the this technique and instead use one of the other techniques that we just learned. So we could use call here. And what we'll do here is we'll say we want this, the this of the study, to be the this when it actually invokes the add to resume function. So it'll come in here, and this will actually be the this of the study and not the this of the function. So if we run this, then everything still works just fine. So there are lots of ways you could actually manipulate what the this implicit parameter will be using call, apply, and bind, or using the this technique. The main takeaway is to know the various different techniques and how to use them to change the this implicit parameter.